Hi, King Dan here. This video is called Property Law, Contract Law, and Tort Law, Breaking the Government Cycle. I'm going to cover some terminology, and I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. This isn't like Webster's Dictionary's perfect definitions. I just wanted to give you a little bit of the context. So, civil rights given by God, connected through Christ, and recognized by government, who is the archangel, just like in the Garden of Eden. Government must recognize, not grant, civil rights. So this is more of a context of civil rights that I'm going to be talking to. And common law, which kind of is the legal traditions of inheriting principles from previous cases. So judges throughout history, judges in modern day can use principles or elements found in previous cases, and then they use those principles, and over time, things that work get reused and things that don't work get faded away. So the tradition gets stronger and stronger, hopefully toward protecting civil rights. There's a natural discovery and development of these principles over time, very much like the scientific process, but instead of the scientific law, this is more political law. Contract law is the voluntary exchange of property rights. So it's more of, once property rights has been established, it's the exchange or the relationship in the voluntary relationship of property. Property law, the recognition of property rights, and which is the ownership over creation, dominion over creation, as very, very beginning in the Bible it sets out that man was to do. And then tort law, which is the resolution of disputes over civil rights or property rights. So these last three, contract, property, and tort law, they kind of work together, which is why I wanted to set the foundation for them here. The context I want to keep is the view that God's view of inalienable property rights. So what is God's view? Some hints that the Bible gives us is that mankind was to have dominion over creation, and that was very early on in Genesis. You have to remember that government, businesses, and churches, they're all organizations. Organizations are creations of man. They have no special privileges on their own. And actually, when you're in an employment position, you're in the archangelic position. You're trading part of your life as labor for the owner of that other organization. The Bible also says, "Thou shalt not steal." You know, that's a very strong phrase from the Ten Commandments, and it's clearly an indicator of something related to property and property rights. The Chunga Constitution has a statement also reflecting property and property rights. It says, "The government agrees with and acknowledges the principle of the sovereign citizen and recognizes that property rights is an extension of that sovereign citizen. Congress is prohibited from passing any law which damages or compromises the value of private property without just compensation." So ultimately, what I really want to get to is that government must recognize absolute property rights. And I mean absolute as you have property rights in every sense of the word. If you own something, if you truly own something, it's yours. So in that principle comes because God gives it to you, and government must respect that. All right, so breaking the government cycle, I just pulled the definitions that I used from a previous slide, but not going over them real quickly. Property law, recognition of property rights. Contract law is the private voluntary exchange of property rights. So I buy, sell goods. And tort law is the resolution of disputes over natural rights or property rights. Okay, so where I'm going with this is to say, if you screw up property rights, if you screw up property law, it actually affects the entire legal process. So if, for instance, property rights of territory or your body or income or anything that you claim ownership over is affected, then you can't then transfer that or exchange that or have a relationship with that in a contract with someone else. Right? If a thief goes to a pawn shop with stolen goods, he actually has no ability to make a contract with the pawn shop because what he has is considered the fruit of a poison tree. He didn't have the property rights over the stolen goods. Okay? If you can't have the relationship, which is in this contract phase, then tort law then is basically the resolution of disputes in property rights. So, but all of this starts as a extension of understanding and respecting property law, property rights. The examples of tort law, let's say specifically I'm looking at bankruptcy. Bankruptcy, we're dealing with an issue where people can no longer pay with their property because they don't have enough income property to pay whatever debts that they owe. Okay? But that is based on the relationship that they previously had. In this case, it's probably a business relationship. Okay? And then that relationship came about because they had legal standing, rights from God, that they actually owned that income or that property. So breaking the government cycle really at its core is who owns property. Is it a communistic society where it's held in the common of the public, or is it a free society, the kingdom, where individuals have ownership over creation? And then naturally, charity, goodwill, tithe, that's part of how your contract, that's part of your relationship with others. And finally, if you understand everything that you own actually belongs to God, then by extension, through you, everything is owned by God.